Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Raleigh Ringer Community Roundtable for tonight. Tonight we have with us Kemp Brinson, who's going to talk to us about change ringing. Kemp is actually a Raleigh Ringer alumni. He was with the group from 98 to 2001. And he had his love of handbell ringing came from his mother, who is also a Raleigh Ringer alumni, Levita. And he was actually introduced to change ringing while he was with the Raleigh Ringers. But he did not really pursue it until after he graduated from NC State and moved to Washington, D.C. For law school. So now he is in Florida, where he is very involved with change ringing, and I'm going to turn it over to Kemp.
All right. Thank you very much. It's good to be here. Thank you, Sarah. All right, so I'm going to share my screen to put some slides up here and talk through what we're going to do tonight. All right, so hopefully you can see that. If you can't, you can pop something in the chat and let me know. But I'm going to talk about change ringing. So I did learn to ring at Washington National Cathedral. There's 2 towers in Washington, D.C., so I was there for about 3 years and learned from the ringers at Washington National Cathedral. The other tower is at the old post office tower downtown. I ring at both towers, and also learned to do change ringing on handbells while I was there. I moved to Florida and took a break from all sorts of ringing, start a family, that sort of thing. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I got back into it again, and I started my own handbell band. You'll hear a lot of different terminology that's similar, but not the same as what you're used to. Band is one of those. We call change ringing groups bands or teams, as opposed to ensembles or choirs. And so I started my own handbell change ringing band where I am now, which is in Central Florida. And I also ring my nearest tower, which is in Miami. I ring there from time to time and travel all over the Eastern Seaboard. I've even rung at some churches in England before on some trips over there. So that's sort of my approach and how I came at this. So here's what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to run my mouth for a while. I will try not to make it too boring. You've probably and can get and have heard of and know a little bit of basics about what change ringing is. So I'm going to be a little light on those sorts of details. If you can read it on Wikipedia, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. The thing that I know that when I was, starting to learn about change ringing that no one could really tell me in the musical handbell ensemble community was the nuts and bolts of how it actually works. How are the methods put together? What are these patterns? How do we learn them? How do we ring them? What do you ring and how do you do that? So I'm really going to kind of dive deep into that. And my goal at the end of this is for you to have kind of a picture of what it's like to actually ring, like what kinds of things do you need to be able to do, and if you would like to actually do some real change ringing, not just as a demonstration or exercise, but actually get into it, you will have a foundation where you can. So we're going to talk about the basic background, what it is that change ringers ring, the notation that we use to write down our methods and how that works. We're then going to build together. I'm going to get a volunteer from among you to kind of do a Socratic kind of thing with me. And we'll step through how to build a couple of basic methods. One is called plain hunt. And you may have heard of plain hunt. And the other one is called plain bob. And that's sort of the next method that someone might learn after plain hunt. We're going to talk about how one goes about learning to ring. We'll stop for a Q&A, and then we're going to do a live demo. We have a online platform that we can use to ring, to practice change ringing during the pandemic. So if you would like to be one of my guinea pigs for that, I will need at least 5 of you. You need to do a couple things. First of all, you need to scrounge up a set of headphones. You cannot do this without headphones. You need to have headphones plugged into your computer so that we don't get feedback. You need to register for an account at this website, na.ringingroom.com, and I'm going to post the link in the chat. I'm doing that right now. So you can go there. You'll go to a tower, and you'll see the bell ropes in there, and you'll see a little link that says log in, and click that link, and it'll give you a chance to register for an account. The NA is important. Do not go to www. It must be na.ringingroom.com. And then you'll need to be able to log into that tower. And once we get to that part of the presentation, we'll actually do it. If you would like to listen to the demonstration but not participate, you do need to go to that website, na.ringing.com/ and that number. And I put the link in the chat. You will be able to listen to it through the browser. You will not have to log in if you just want to listen. You only need to be able to log in if you want to ring. You will not be able to hear the bells ringing in the Zoom. You'll only be able to hear the bells ringing in the browser. This is kind of a bit, if you're really a technophobe, you do have to kind of know how to switch windows between your browser and Zoom and have a website up on your browser and doing something on that while the Zoom meeting is happening in the background. If that was really confusing for you, me explaining that, then this will be a challenge. I'll do my best with you and we'll get you through it. And there's been no one who has not been able to get through it if we spend some time with them to do it. But if that's challenging for you, it may get a little frustrating at the end. But if you can easily juggle a couple different windows on your computer, it'll be no problem. We'll be able to do it. So while I'm talking, if you want to go and get registered and dig up a set of headphones you can plug into your computer, if you want to participate, that would be great. And I'll flash this info up as well as the link again when we get to the end. All right, a little bit of basic background. First of all, what is change ringing? Change ringing was originated in England in the 1600s, and it is really more of a sport or a scientific hobby than it is a musical pursuit. The original change ringers did it to kind of explore the mathematical nature of patterns and to get exercise. Originally, bearings that bells sat on weren't even bearings at all. They were called gudgeons, and it was just pieces of metal sliding across each other. So they were very difficult to ring, and it was quite good exercise to ring the bells up and mess about with trying to control them. But the innovation that made it possible to do change ringing was the development of a full wheel that could be attached to the bell so that the bell could swing 360 degrees. When the bell goes mouth up, it balances mouth up if you control it just right. And that enables you to pause. Normally a bell is a giant pendulum and you can't control the timing of it. But if you could get it to swing 360 degrees when it gets to the top, you can pause there for a moment. And that enables us to control when the bell strikes by varying the length of the time that we have it pausing at the top. And that pause, that ability to ring full circle, is what makes change ringing possible. From England, the exercise spread to basically anywhere England conquered. So anywhere in the empire, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, USA, Canada, a couple other places. There's a tower in Singapore now. There's a couple in more central in Africa, a few in the Caribbean that don't have any bells in them. We don't normally do change ringing there, but there's a few bells hung that way in the Caribbean, places like that. And we do not ring traditional melodies. We ring patterns. We call those patterns methods. And you can think of a method as sort of like a song or a symphony. Instead of ringing songs, we ring methods. Change ringing is done both on handbells and tower bells. I'm going to focus a bit on handbells for this talk. We'll talk a lot about tower bells too. And in the world, there are probably about 40 to 50,000 active change ringers. Most of those are in England, but there's about 500 of us in the United States and Canada. We're kind of grouped together under a North American umbrella. And we are divided up into about 50 different bands of ringers, concentrated on the coast and mostly on the East Coast, but all over the place. And there are two fundamentally different types of change ringing. One is called call change ringing, and the other is called method ringing. In call change ringing, the conductor will actually shout out the different changes. He or she will tell the ringers what to do every step of the way. So they might say 2 to 3, and that means bell number 2 needs to start ringing after bell number 3 instead of after bell number 1. And they'll use those sorts of calls to put the bells in whatever patterns they want. In method ringing, which is more what I do, we have memorized these methods, these songs, and we perform them without being told what to do, except for a couple of places in the middle. And we'll talk about that in a bit. So the bells themselves look like this. This is a tower in Orleans, Massachusetts, and I took this photo. I climbed up a ladder along the wall, and I'm sort of standing on the frame looking down over the top of the bells to take this picture. There are usually in a tower 5 to 12 bells. That's not a universal rule, but that is typical. Sometimes 3 or 4, sometimes 14 or 16, but usually 5 to 12. 6 and 8 are the most common numbers of bells to have in a tower. They are usually arranged in a diatonic scale, with the low note being the tonic. So in a 4-bell tower pitched in the key of C, you might have C, D, E, and F. In a 6-bell tower pitched in the key of C, you'd have C, D, E, F, G, and A. And the low note, the largest bell, is always the root note of that scale. We typically do not even think about the notes. I don't care if the bell I'm ringing is an E flat or an F sharp or whatever it is. All I care about is what order it's in the scale. Like what scale note am I? Am I the 3rd note of the scale or the 4th note of the scale? We don't really think about, and sometimes don't even know what key we're in, because we don't care, because there's only one key we can ring in any given tower. The size of a tower varies very widely. So we usually measure and talk about the size of a ring of bells based on the weight of the largest bell in the tower. The largest bell in the tower, the root note, the bottom note of the scale, is always called the tenor, whatever note it happens to be. So a light ring of bells might have a tenor weight of, say, 500, 600 pounds, somewhere in that ballpark. That's quite light. Incidentally, we go down even smaller. There are things called mini rings, which are basically handbells mounted on wheels with weights to make them feel like there's something. And people, tinkle away on them, pulling little tiny little ropes. It's very adorable and very fast, because they swing very quickly. And so, they go down to maybe a pound or 2. But a light ring of bells is somewhere in the ballpark of about 500 pounds-ish. Ask another change ringer, they might tell you a different definition of light, medium, and heavy. A medium ring of bells might be about 1,500 pounds. A heavy ring might be about 3,000 pounds. The heaviest ring here in North America is 3,600 pounds, and that's at Washington National Cathedral. The heaviest change ringing bell in the world, which is obviously in England, is at Liverpool Cathedral, and it weighs over 9,000 pounds. It's quite a monster. 3,000 pounds is plenty for most people most of the time. And the bells are rung full circle, starting in the mouth up position. Swing, you pull the rope, you pull the bell off the balance point, it will swing down 360 degrees all the way up to the next balance point, and right before it gets to the top on the other side, that's when it sounds. So the bell will ring a second and a half after you've pulled the rope. And that's part of the challenge and fun of it, is to time that properly. Once it gets mouth up on that side, you pull the rope again, and it comes back down, swings back the other way, and sounds on the other side. And so we just go back and forth in those 2 different strokes to generate the changes. This is a view of bells the way they are normally sitting in the tower. So these bells are mouth down. And if anyone didn't mention, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll try to catch them. Sarah, if you could help me look at those and let me know if I've missed one. But I welcome those. I want to talk a little bit about how we get them to park mouthed up like that. So the bells are down for safety. If they're up, they're unstable, because any little push or tug of the rope will cause them to swing. It'll cause the rope to gyrate around violently. It's like a fire hose. If it's not well controlled, it could really hurt someone. So for safety, we have to leave them down. You'll see in the green oval at the top a piece of wood sticking straight up. That is called the stay. And when the bell is mouth up, the stay is pointed straight down. You will see the little green oval at the bottom. There's a little piece of wood sticking out under the bell. That is wood. It is horizontal. It is not attached to the bell. It is sitting underneath it. And it's got a pivot on the back side of the bell that you can't see. And it rests on this board on the front side that you can see here. And it slides back and forth on that board, and it'll hit little stoppers on the left and the right, denoted by the green arrows. So that slider, that piece of wood, will catch the stay when it's pointed mouth. When the bell is mouth up, the stay is pointed down. It'll catch on that slider. And because the slider slides back and forth, it enables the bell just to go a little bit past 360 degrees. So we can park it and let it rest sitting against that slider, when we're not ringing them in the middle of a ringing session. So what we will do when we get to a tower, the first thing we have to do is raise the bells, which means spending a lot of time just pulling and pulling and pulling and letting it get higher and higher and higher until eventually they're mouth up. and then we can park them there. We ring, we swap back and forth, try different things, and then at the end of the practice night, we lower them again for safety. But that's how that works. You can also see in this photo the wheels and the way the rope attaches to the wheels, and get a sense of what that looks like. These are just some examples of bell towers. All of these are here in North America. I'll just run through them real quick. From the top left, Washington National Cathedral, Trinity Wall Street, Old Post Office Tower in Washington, D.C. Top right is Miami. That's where I ring now. Bottom left is Newcastle, Delaware, a nice little light ring of 6. I love those bells. Next is Orleans, Massachusetts. That's when I was looking down at the bells that were mouth up, that's where that is. The next photo is in Toronto, and then behind me is in Seattle, Washington at the University of Washington. I've rung at all these towers except Toronto and Washington. This is what it looks like inside the ringing chamber. This is in Kalamazoo at the tower there. You can see that the ropes have a woolen tuft woven into them. That is called a sally. What happens is the sally will be hanging in front of your face when you walk up to the bell, and it'll have a length of rope behind it underneath it, and you'll grab the bottom end of it. That's called the tail, and you can see the young man in the middle is holding onto the back end of his rope. He's holding onto the tail. Everyone else is in some different point in their ringing process, but you'll pull on the sally. That will cause the bell to come off the balance point. The rope will then wrap around the wheel and your arms will get sucked up over your head. And right as your hands are crossing in front of your face, the bell will sound. And then if you've done it right, you can kind of pause for a moment there. You'll pull down again. The bell will swing, the rope will unwind from the wheel, and you have to catch the rope in the middle on that sally. And so the sally helps protect our hands from rope burns, gives us a better thing to grab onto. Also adds a little bit of weight, which kind of helps control the bell a little bit. And so traditionally bells are hung with these types of ropes. This is what handbell ringing looks like. Just a few people sitting in a room in a circle. I'm teaching bells to some friends of mine. We are actually sitting in the tower at Miami for this. But that kind of gets into one of the differences between handbells and tower bells, in that handbell ringing for change ringing is mostly just for fun. We do not see a lot of change ringers doing concerts or performances for the public on handbells. I would love to change that. I think handbells are great, but no one's going to come listen to 3 hours of handbell ringing, just patterns that they don't understand. So it works better more as a demonstration of something different, something to do is in combination with something else or as background for something. But we mostly pursue it just for fun, whereas tower bells are very much a public performance whenever you ring them, just by their very nature. There's always somebody who can hear what you're doing nearby. In tower bells, each ringer has 1 bell at a time. In handbells and change ringing, we have 2 at a time, 1 in each hand. In tower bells, the challenge is very physical. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of time to learn how to control the bell, one, safely without being a danger to yourself or to the person ringing next to you. And it also takes a long time to get to where you can control the bell well enough to make it sound where you want it to. Whereas in handbells, it'll take me literally seconds to show someone how to hold the bell and how to ring it the way that we ring it. Most change ringers are tower bell ringers. Handbells is more of a rare sort of specialty thing that some of us do, either because we know what fun is or because we're crazy. I'll let you decide which that is. And tower bells is, it's an academic challenge, but it's also really a physical challenge, not in the strength sense, but more in the technique sense. Tower bell ringing is a lot like swimming, in that the better you are at it, the less difficult it is, and the worse you are at it, the more tiring it is. So it's very much about learning the right technique, especially on the larger bells. And handbells are more of an academic pursuit. It is a physical exercise that is, good to get moving, but it's really done more for the intellectual challenge of it. So what do we ring? We go into a tower for a practice night. What are we going to work on? Well, we sort of take ringers through, let's see. Well, I don't know. so someone direct messaged me, the slide move had the bullet point section and verse system more popular and more rare. I know among change ringers, I can assure you there are far more change ringers who ring tower bells than there are change ringers who ring handbells. Yes, lots of handbell ringers do handle more than 2 at once. I am not aware of very many handbell change ringers who ring more than 2 at once. There is a video famously online of a guy, a very well-known ringer in the UK, ringing 4 bells at one time to a very difficult method. And it's mind-boggling. You'll see in a minute, it takes a lot to keep track of 2 bells at once. Because everything that we do is memorized. And so doing that in the way that we do it with 4 bells is very much a challenge. There are some people who can do it, especially if the method only has 4 bells in it. So you can ring 4 bells by yourself with no other ringers. Some people can do that, okay. But once you start adding the complexity of 8 or 10 bells going on, yes, handbells for change ringing. I don't know if that was in chat or direct message to me. But anyway, so a learner, we will take through a progression. We'll start with call changes once you can control the bell. We'll then move on to ringing plain hunt with you. And plain hunt is 10 to 24 changes long. We'll talk more about what it exactly is in a bit. It takes about 30 seconds to do. And we often repeat it over and over again. It's a good kind of, you can think of plain hunt as sort of like stretching in a ballet class or a warm-up lap on the track. It's an exercise on which all the other methods are based. And so we often work on it alone as a warm-up and as a way to teach learners before we get them going on more complicated things. After you can plain hunt, we will start to teach you basic methods. And the first method we typically teach is plain bob. There are other towers that do it a little differently, but typically we'll start with plain bob. And we'll ring what's called a plain course. And you can think of a plain course of plain bob. A plain course is sort of like the chorus of the song. You learn the basic melody, the basic structure of it, but you don't necessarily know all the words. And so we will teach you the basic chorus, the basic method without any complexities. And typically a method will not be very long. It'll only be somewhere between maybe 50 or 120 changes, depending on how many bells we're ringing on and how complicated the method is. And it'll normally take 1 to 2 minutes to ring through a plain course of a basic method on 6 or 8 bells. Once you can ring a plain course of a basic method, such as plain bob, we will then teach you how to ring short touches. And a touch is kind of like a song. It has some variation in it. It's not just the same words repeated over and over again. And the way we ring a touch of a method is by adding calls. So the conductor, which is the person who's in charge of the ringing, will yell out something, and we'll talk about what they will yell in a minute. And that tells the ringers who are ringing this basic method for one little bit to swap places around a bit, and just for one row. And that will swap the bells into a different starting order. And then the bells will continue to ring the method that they've memorized, but starting from a different position. So it puts the bells, it shifts the bells in a different position with respect to each other. And that will enable us to vary the ringing and make it longer, to make those methods, which are only 50 to 120 changes long, a little bit longer, maybe 100 to 200 changes. So a lot of what you do on a practice night at a tower or on a practice night in a handbell band is ring touches of different things that different people are working on so that they can practice those calls and practice ringing our songs. Then once you can ring a touch comfortably, somebody sent me a direct message, asked me if I'd ever come across Michael Darty. He was a change ringer at Kalamazoo. No, I haven't. I don't know many ringers at Kalamazoo. I've run into a couple of them here and there, but if he was ringing back then, I wasn't ringing back then. So he would have to come back in order for me to meet him. So a quarter peal is basically a really long touch. So we just ring a touch, but we keep going. And a quarter peal is defined usually somewhere in the ballpark of 1,250 changes, and it takes about 45 minutes to ring. And you can think of a quarter peal as like a symphony. So call changes are the basic building block. Plain hunt is the stretching. Plain courses are the choruses. Short touches are the songs. Quarter peals are the symphonies. And they will last usually about 45 minutes. And that's a true performance. You might ring a quarter peal for a wedding or for a church service or for a holiday or just for fun. And then for those of us who are really nuts, we have peels, and peels are like the marathon. A peel takes about 3 hours to ring. It involves ringing at least usually about 5,000 different changes. That means each bell will sound 5,000 times or longer. And peels are a major challenge both to your stamina as well as your mental stamina. And what's fun about peel ringing is that if you've reached the level where you can do that consistently for 3 hours, you're probably pretty good at it. So your best ringing really happens in the middle of a peel when it gets really comfortable and people are just sort of, they know the method backwards and forwards and it just flows and the striking is perfect. And that's when those magic moments happen, when everything just sort of comes together. One quick note, and this quickly delves into the math of it a bit. And I want to assure you, although we're going to be looking at a bunch of numbers here in a moment, the math really has nothing to do with what you need to know to learn how to do it or to enjoy it. Some of the nerdier among us really get into the math of it, but it's really not necessary. So do not let this scare you away from this at all. But the reason change ringing developed is because the early change ringers were fascinated with ringing all the possible permutations. If you remember from math class, a permutation is simply a different order in which things come. So if you're ringing, say, 4 bells, C, D, E, and F, one permutation is C, D, E, F. Another permutation is F, E, D, C. Another one is F, E, D, C, or F, E, C, D. Anyway, all the different orders that they can fall in. Keith has a question, I think. Keith, did you want to?
No, I'm fine.
Oh, you have your hand up, it looks like. So sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. So anyway, so the number of possible permutations you might have on different numbers of bells is indicated by the exclamation point, which is, for example, 5 factorial is the number of permutations that you can have on 5 bells. If you remember back from math class, 5 factorial means 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So on 5 bells, there's 120 possible changes. On 6 bells, there's 720 possible changes. On 7 bells, there's 5,040 possible changes. That is why a peal is about 5,000 changes long, because all the possible permutations you can ring on 7 bells is about 5,000 changes long. So that's why we define a peal that way. And our ringing is organized into extents quite often. And so a lot of what we do is geared around trying to figure out different ways to generate those different permutations. And then finally, the conductors. The conductor is the person in the band. Now, the conductor is a ringer. So the person who's leading it, it's not like a baton or anything like that. They're actually one of the ringers. And they're the people who control all this. So all the ringers really need to know to ring on a touch or a quarter peal or a peal is the plain course of the method. They just have to know the method. And the conductor, by making calls, will tell them what to do in order to generate the longer touches and the longer quarter peals and that sort of thing. All right, so how long does it take? If you want to learn, if you started today to learn change ringing, how long would it take you? Well, one of the beauties of handbells is the learning curve is a lot shorter. To ring call changes on tower bells, it's going to take us 5 to 6 sessions. Maybe we could do that all in a weekend, or maybe we could do that over the course of a couple of months, but it's going to take you 5 or 6 sessions just to get to where you can pull a rope without hanging yourself, before we can let you ring it without somebody standing behind you and holding your hands literally and making sure that you're safe. With handbells, once you can do that, then we start you on call changes, telling you where to go. Ring in 3rd place, ring in 4th place, ring after the 7. In handbells, we skip that step because there's no challenge to the technique of it. You can ring plain hunt on tower bells. Maybe if you're good in a couple of months, if it takes you a little longer, 3 to 4 months, but it'll take you a few months before you can plain hunt. I could guarantee you, if I were sitting down with any person in this room for 30 minutes, I could have you plain hunting on handbells with 2 bells. To get to where you can ring a plain course of a method, it might take 3 to 6 months in the tower, whereas it'll only take you 3 to 6 sessions, maybe a month or 2 on handbells. Touches 3 to 12 months, and eventually maybe on tower bells you could ring a peal after a year or 2 of ringing, whereas in handbells you could ring a peal after 6 months to a year. These time periods vary very widely depending on the person, depending on the teacher. It's a lot easier to teach someone if you have some experienced ringers around you. So 3 experienced ringers and 1 beginner, that beginner is going to progress a lot more quickly than a band with 1 experienced ringer and 3 beginners, much more quickly. So these are just really general guidelines, and different people take 2 at different speeds, obviously. But I love handbells because the learning curve is so much quicker. Tower bell ringers often get frustrated after the 2 or 3 month mark because they're putting all this work in and they still can't ring anything. But in handbells, we can see some progress immediately. So what do we ring? Let's get into the nitty gritty of it. Our ringing is based around 4 simple rules. The first rule is we always start and end in rounds. Rounds is a descending scale. So for example, on 6 bells in the key of C, rounds would be A, G, F, E, D, C. On 8 bells in the key of C, rounds would be C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. But we always start in rounds and we always end in rounds. The second rule is that each bell can move at most 1 place. So if you're ringing, say, on beat 2 of a measure, in the next measure, you can ring on beat 1, you can ring on beat 2 again, or you can ring on beat 3, but you can't ring on beats 4, 5, or 6 because that would involve jumping more than 1 place. Excuse me. The reason for that is because the bell, although we can control it, we can't control it very much. So it's impossible to take that giant 3,000-pound tenor, and if you're ringing on beat 6, to all of a sudden make it spin on a dime and get back to the other side and ring on beat 1 of the next change. That isn't possible. So we limit the bells for the most part to moving at most 1 change. Now, if you think about it, that has some practical implications. What that means is there's really only 2 things that you can do with your bell from 1 change to the next. When I say the word change, I'm referring to what you would think of as a measure, from 1 measure to the next. We never use the word measure. We use the word change or row, like rows and columns, row, and you'll see why we call it a row in a minute. But there are, from 1 change to the next, you can stay where you are. So if you're in 3rd place, you can stay in 3rd place, or you can swap places with your neighbor. So if a bell is moving from 3rd place to 4th place, by definition, there must be a bell moving from 4th place to 3rd place because there's nowhere else that bell could come from and still obey this rule that each bell can move only 1 place per change. For example, if a bell's moving from 3rd place to 4th place and a bell's moving from 3rd place to 4th place, and a bell's moving from 4th place to 5th place, there's no one that can move into 3rd place without somebody having to move twice. So there's only 2 options. You can stay where you are, or you can swap places with your neighbor. That's it. No other options. The third rule, and this is the one that really makes it interesting, is we do not repeat permutations. So in any given touch or quarter peal or peal, once you have rung C, E, D, F, A, G, you cannot ring that sequence again until you're done. If, for example, we're ringing a peal, but we're only ringing it on 6 bells, so a peal is 5,000 changes, and 6 bells only have 720 permutations, you can't repeat any permutations until you've rung them all. So you must ring all 720 1 time through before you can ring any more. I won't get into. If an experienced change ringer is listening, they would quickly raise their hand and say, so there's some exceptions to that, and there are, but it's beyond the scope of this. But the general idea is you can only ring a full set of permutations before you can start in on the next one extent, and then you can start in on the next one. So that the methods have to be really designed in a very clever way to avoid repeating something you've already rung. And then the 4th rule is everything is memorized. You're not allowed to look at notes. You must have it all up here, including the conductor who's making the calls to swap people in different places. It sounds a lot harder than it actually is. All right, so let's talk about a little bit of basic notation about how we write down what we're doing. So this is a method. This is a relatively advanced method. It's one of the, once you kind of turn the corner from intermediate to advanced, this is the method that you'll probably use to take that step. And this shows you what our notation looks like. So each bell is assigned a number, and we simply write down the numbers to represent the sequence of bells. In this particular diagram, the number 1 has been replaced with the red line. and the bell number 2 has been replaced with the blue line. And so this shows the path of those 2 bells through this particular method. We'll deconstruct this in a bit in a moment, but this is just a snapshot of what it looks like. The column behind my head here is simply all the bells superimposed upon one another to show what they're all doing at once. So it's very much, the memorization process is very much a visual exercise of memorizing what the pattern looks like, as opposed to memorizing a long sequence of gibberish numbers. So here's how we do this. In regular music that you're used to, the tonic note, the root note of the scale, is usually designated as the number 1. So for example, if you're going to construct a minor triad or a major triad, you would use notes numbers 1, 3, and 5, C, E, G. But in change ringing, we do it completely backwards, and that takes some getting used to. So in our form of ringing, the highest note is always number 1. And we call that highest note the treble. So if you're ringing on 8 bells, the treble is the upper octave. If you're ringing on 6 bells, say in the key of C, the treble is an A. And then we number them. The numbers go up as the pitch goes down. So on 6 bells, the lowest pitch note, the largest bell, is number 6. On 8 bells, the highest weight bell, the lowest pitch note, is number 8. So if we were to construct a major triad on change ringing bells, it would be on 8 bells, it would be 8, 6, 4. On 6 bells, it would be 6, 4, 2, because we count from the other direction. I'm using that just as an example to explain the numbers. We do not ring chords. That is not something that's done very often on purpose. So, so don't get hung up on chords or the constructing triads on change ringing bells. That's just how we number them. So here's 2 examples of 2 changes. The top one is rounds, and in regular written music in the key of C, it looks like that. But change ringers would think of that as bell number 1, then bell number 2, then bell number 3, then bell number 4, then bell number 5, and so forth. If we wanted to ring the second example, which is B, C, G, A, E, F, C, D, change ringers would write that as 2, 1, 4, 3, 6, 5, 8, 7. So we build the methods that we build. Remember, I told you there were only 2 options. You can either stay where you are or swap places with your neighbor. So the way that we build our methods is by combining making places, staying where you are, with exchanging places with your neighbor. So for example, if the change that we're on, the row that we're on, the measure is bell number 2, then bell number 3, then 5, then 1, then 4, then 6, 2, 3, 5, 1, 4, 6. We would apply this structure to it to generate a new change. We've, just for the sake of this example, I've chosen place, cross, place, cross. So the bell in first place will make a place. It'll stay where it is. So bell number 2 comes down to first place in the next row. Bell number 1 comes down to 4th place in the next row because it was in 4th place before. And then the 2 bells between the 2 and the 1 will swap places. And the 2 bells at the end will swap places. Place, cross, place, cross. And that is one way that we could generate a new change from 2, 3, 5, 1, 4, 6. Our methods are simply repeated applications of this sort of rule to successive changes. We're going to do that in just a moment. All right, so we're going to build Plain Hunt from scratch. And I think the best way to do this is to have someone volunteer to unmute and let me kind of talk you through it, preferably someone who's like, ooh, this looks cool, but who doesn't know anything about it yet. And we're going to kind of do this Socratically, so everyone else can watch me kind of talk through it with you, and hopefully they'll kind of pick it up along the way too. Do I have somebody willing to step up and volunteer? Put something in the chat, raise your hand. Alan is raising his hand. Alan, are you unmuted?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, so where are you, Alan?
West Virginia.
All right, very good. Good to meet you. All right, so we're gonna, do you know anything about change ringing at all? Have you ever
No.
experienced it? Oh, fantastic. All right, so we're gonna do Plain Hunt, and we're gonna do it on 6 bells. By the way, we have funny names for everything. So one of the funny things we have funny names for is the number of bells that we're ringing. So 6 bells is called minor. That has nothing to do with a minor key. It's a completely different issue. So we're going to build Plain Hunt minor. And we're going to start from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is rounds, A, G, F, E, D, C. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to apply this algorithm, this set of things. We're going to have each bell swap places with its neighbor. So if we do that, what will be the next change in this sequence?
2, 1.
Yep.
Do
Keep going.
you change them all, or do you keep the rest of them?
Every one, you do it all at once.
4, 3, 6,
Yep.
5.
That's exactly right. So the first step in plain punt is to have every bell swap places with its neighbor. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 becomes 2, 1, 4, 3, 6, 5. Step 2 is to have the bells on the outside stay where they are. So they're going to make a place. And the interior 2 pairs of bells will swap places with their neighbor. So if we apply that to 2, 1, 4, 3, 6, 5, what will be the next change that's generated?
2, 4, 1, 6, 3, 5.
Exactly right. So we normally don't write out all these crosses and places. We normally just leave that out. So I'm going to remove those. And all we have to do to generate what we're calling plain hunt is simply repeat that algorithm over and over again. So step 1 is all the bell swap. Step 2 is the internal pair swap. So if I repeat step 1, we're just going to do it successfully. Step 1, step 2, step 1, step 2, step 1, step 2. If I do step 1 again to 2, 4, 1, 6, 3, 5, what would be the next change in the sequence?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Nope, we're starting from 2, 4, 1, 6, 3, 5.
Sorry.
Yeah.
4, 2, 6, 1, 5, 3.
That's exactly right. And then repeat step 2, starting from 4, 2, 6, 1, 5, 3.
4, 6, 2, 5, 1, 3.
Exactly right. That's all plain hunt is that over and over and over again. So we won't belabor this exercise too much. I'll just write it out because I already did it. And you'll see that if you just repeat that over and over again, we will eventually get back to rounds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what we've done is we've figured out a very, very simple algorithm to generate 12 changes. And if you counted these, you'd see that it's 12 changes long if you only count the rounds once. I don't care if you count the top one or the last one, either way. Now this looks complicated, but I'm going to color the bell number 1 red so you can see what it's doing. If you were to picture a line being drawn through that number 1 bell, it's doing a very, very, very simple thing. It's just starting on beat 1. It's going to beat 2. It's going to beat 3. And I put this in the column on the right here. That sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, and you can just repeat it. When you get to the end, you stay there twice. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. Over and over and over again. That's plain hunt. Anybody can count to 6 forwards and then backwards. So really, if you wanted to memorize this and ring it, that's all you need to remember is I ring in first place, I ring in second place, I ring in third place, and so forth. The cool part about that is that is the same pattern that every bell rings. The 3 rings the exact same pattern. It just starts in a different place. So that's where the starts are. And if you look at, and for example, pick the 3, you'll see that the 3 starts in 3rd place and then goes to 4th. And if you look at it in the table on the left, it just simply traverses the same pattern until it gets back to the beginning. So if you want to ring plain hunt from any bell, all you have to know is that basic sequence and where your bell starts in that sequence. Does that make complete sense? No, you're shaking your head.
Well, that kind of went over my head.
Yeah. So one feature of a lot of these methods is that every bell rings the same thing.
Okay.
So the basic sequence of plain hunt is simply a line that looks like the line that the 1 makes. Picture it repeated. Picture the stuff between the underlining just repeated over and over again.
Okay.
And each bell is simply hunting from the front to the back, then back to the front, then to the back, over and over again. And every bell does the same thing. It just starts in a different place on that sequence.
Okay.
Make sense? It's kind of like a round where every person starts on a different measure of the round to generate the music that's created.
Okay.
Make sense a little bit?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. It's tricky stuff. It's fun. All right. So what in the world are you going to do? Oh, someone asked, is that what I've used with youth? We've called cross and stretch. Yes, it is. So most change ringing is done with the bells held in your hands. Cross and stretch is a fun exercise that creates the same music in an entirely different way. And you are simulating that crossing and holding. So when you're crossing or stretching, you are exchanging places with your neighbor. And when you're retaining the bell in your hand, as you do on either end, then you are you're making a place. So it's the same idea. And you could generate any change ringing method you wanted if you knew where the crosses and the places were for that particular method. So anyway, the point of this is that ringing a method is, as long as you can remember the basic sequence, which is what's in that column on the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1. And then to repeat that, you would just keep going. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. As long as you can keep that in your head, you can ring plain hunt and you can ring any bell in the sequence, because each bell rings the exact same thing. It just starts in a different spot. So bell number 5 will start in 5th place. Bell number 6 will start in 6th place. Bell number 4 starts in 4th place, in a different place along that line. All right. So how in the world could you ring 2 bells? Now, I don't expect this to make much sense right now, but if you look at the visual pattern on the left, I've colored the 2 bell red now. You can see that they make an elegant visual pattern with each other. And that is because the bells hunt in parallel. So for a time, they are simply alternating with 1 bell in between them. So they would go from 2nd place and 4th place to 3rd place and 5th place to 4th place and 6th place. So I don't expect that to make a lot of sense just looking at it, except to say that it is not as hard as it looks if you sit down and kind of study it a bit, because they do make, these patterns are not just random numbers. They are elegant lines that are relatively easy to figure out and to follow in your head. All right. All right. So any questions, Alan? Does that kind of make sense? Anything not making sense I need to explain a little better?
Kind of.
Kind of. Yeah, that's okay. So the key takeaway here is plain hunt. If you wanted to ring plain hunt, which I hope you'll do at the end, all you have to know how to do is memorize count up, count backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you can do that, you can ring plain hunt and generate this music shown on the left without having memorized all that gibberish.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to now build on plain hunt and take it a step further. What if we don't want to ring just 12 changes? What if we want to ring a few more? So let me get another volunteer to talk through that with. Who have I got who's willing to sacrifice their sanity and dignity for just a moment? Don't make Alan do it again.
Please.
Someone step up.
Catherine Gerber is waving her hand.
Oh, great. Catherine. Yeah, I don't see them. So let's see. Catherine. I do not see you, but that's okay. Can you hear me, Catherine? Can you speak?
Yes, I can hear you. I unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
I can, and I can see you now. Great.
Okay.
Good to meet you. Where are you?
I'm in Hartville, Ohio.
Oh, wonderful. Are you near Kalamazoo, Michigan, or let's see, I may have my geography all backwards. I can't think of what tower would be near. There is a Hempel band in Indiana. I'm trying to think of what would be in Ohio. I don't know. Anyway, all right. So we're going to talk through plain Bob. So did the plain hunt make sense to you?
Yes, it did.
Fantastic. So we're going to turn up the level of complexity one itty bitty notch and figure out how to get from plain hunt to plain Bob. So plain hunt is on the left, exactly what was on the screen a moment ago. And I've drawn a little red box around the bottom 4 changes in plain hunt. In the second red box, I've simply rewritten those 4 changes exactly like they are in plain hunt, except I've added the sequence of, placemaking and exchanges in the in the gap between the third and the fourth row. You see that?
Mhm.
So for plain Bob, if we want to ring plain Bob instead of plain Hunt, we actually want to ring a song, a chorus, instead of simply an exercise. All I'm going to do is ring plain Hunt. I'm going to start with plain Hunt, and I'm going to ring plain Hunt all the way till the very end, right before it gets back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And in that last change, before I get back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, instead of going place, cross, cross, place, I'm going to do something different for that one change, and that's all. And the thing that I'm going to do different is place, place, cross, cross, instead of place, cross, cross, place.
Okay.
So if I apply that to the change 1, 3, 2, 5, 4, 6, what would be the next change in plain Bob?
1, 3, 5, 2, 6, 4.
That is exactly right. So now I didn't get back to rounds. I rang 12 changes and I'm ending on 1, 3, 5, 2, 6, 4 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I can ring plain Hunt again with the bells starting in that position instead of starting in rounds. And I can generate all new permutations, none of which are the same permutations as before. So if I do that, this is kind of what I get. Now I've put in red the 1, 3, 5, 2, 6, 4 because to point out that it's not repeated. You only ring 1, 3, 5, 2, 6, 4 once. You would normally think of these in your brain as being stacked on top of each other instead of side by side, but our monitors are horizontal instead of vertical. So that would be very difficult to see on the screen as we get deeper and deeper into this. But think of the top part as kind of superimposed on the bottom part with the 1, 3, 5, 2, 6, 4 not repeated. So then we just ring plain Hunt again, starting from 1, 3, 5, 2, 6, 4. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Awesome. So if I then carry that out all the way till I get to the point where I'm about to get back to 1, 3, 5, 2, 6, 4, where I started for this column, I don't want to do that. I want to continue ringing longer. I want to ring plain Bob, not just plain Hunt. So when I get back to this starting point again, I'm going to do that same thing again. Instead of doing place, cross, cross, place, I'm going to do place, place, cross, cross. What would be the next change in the sequence if I do place, place, cross, cross at this point?
1, 5, 6, 3, 4, 2.
Exactly right. So you see the theme here, I hope. All I do is just keep doing that over and over again. Whenever I get back to where I started, I do that special change, one or place, place, cross, cross, for one change to put the bells into a new starting position. And if I keep doing that over and over, I will eventually get back to rounds. And I'll get back to rounds after 60 changes instead of after 12. That is plain Bob. It is mostly plain Hunt. It is mostly that simple 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, except one little tweak whenever we get back to where we started. If I take this and write it out the way I showed you the Cambridge minor before, it looks like that. It's kind of hard to see, but picture each of these columns stacked on top of each other in sequence. And that is what plain Bob would look like when you're actually learning it and memorizing it. So you can see it's mostly plain Hunt. And I don't expect this to be, totally sensical, just glancing at it. The key takeaway here is these methods build on one another. Usually learning a new method that's more complicated is simply a matter of taking something you already know and adding a little tweak to it, somewhere special. In plain Bob, you simply plain Hunt. And whenever, and we base this, you can see that the red line, which is the treble bell, doesn't do anything all that special. It just goes back and forth from first place to sixth place, first place to sixth place. It doesn't do any zigzagging. It doesn't do anything funky. And everything else is done based on that. So to go from plain Hunt to plain Bob, you would simply tell yourself, I plain Hunt, like I know how to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1. And whenever the treble gets back to first place, I do one little different thing for one change. I take a step back, swap places with my neighbor, and then I keep going. And that will generate the sequence of changes that we know as plain Bob. That kind of makes sense?
Mhm.
or it would make sense if we looked at it and studied it in a bit more detail. So that's the idea. So this is just a taste into a very deep rabbit hole about how this stuff works. Let me do something real quick. My green screen is causing me problems here. Oh, well, you're just gonna have to live with it. All right. So someone's asked how many change ringers are there in the US? I'm not sure in the United States. I know in the in North America, so in the United States and Canada, there are approximately 500 of us or so, 400 to 600, somewhere in that ballpark. Some of us are lapsed. There may be 100 or so more that used to, and they moved somewhere far away. But there are about 500 members of the North American Guild of Change Ringers. How do you find change ringers? We'll talk about that in a bit, but you go to nagcr.org. That's the North American Guild of Change Ringers. And you can find a band near you. There's a map there. Our website's kind of dated. I'm actually in charge of spearheading a project to redo the website, and it is a work in progress, but the old website is still up, and you can have a list of all the towers and handbell bands available there at it's nagcr.org. All right, so Catherine, we're gonna do one more fun little thing here. Plain Bob is only 60 changes long. How could we get to, on 6 bells, for example, all 720 permutations? And the answer is we take this basic structure and we add one more little tweak to it. We add what we call calls. And calls are when the conductor will literally shout, and usually he shouts one of 2 words. He'll either yell, he or she will either yell Bob or single. And those 2 words are magic words that tell the ringers to do something different. All the calls take effect at the place, place, cross, cross. So at that point where the treble is in first place and the other bells are doing their place, place, cross, cross business, if the conductor yells Bob, instead of doing place, place, cross, cross, you do place, cross, place, cross. And if the conductor yells single, instead of doing place, place, cross, cross, you do place, 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 cross. And these have the effect of swapping the bells into yet another different starting order. And then you ring Plain Bob starting from there. So with the addition of that one little extra bit of complexity, we can generate other changes and ring all the possible permutations. This is all really theoretical. None of this do you really need to know in order to learn to ring and start the process. But this is kind of if this intrigues you at all, you're made for this. Talk to me. If the mystique of it intrigues you and this doesn't, that's okay too, because there's plenty of ringing that happens that doesn't require an intimate knowledge of this. But this is the basic idea of how these methods are put together, how we use them to generate different permutations, and how our music is built. And the further you go, just the more tweaks and complications, and you end up getting some really elegant and very interesting things happening as you get into the more complicated methods. So Catherine, do you have any questions about any of this that we've talked about together?
Yes, just looking there on your single call.
Yep.
The first 4 are stay, but then the last 2 that are changed, but your numbers on the bottom didn't change.
That is a mistake. They should have.
Okay.
It should say,
Okay.
good catch. You're
And
on
it's
it,
like-
Catherine. Good catch. No, that bottom one should be 132564. That was a
Okay.
typo on my part. Very good. Yeah,
Then I
you
I
got
get
it now.
it.
Yeah,
then-
no, thank
and
you.
And you continue with that. So going over to the Bob one, that is correct. The
that is
next
correct.
one, the next one would be 1, 3, 2, 5, 4. Oh, but that would take you back to the other one.
Yeah,
So
so
would they call?
they would all cross at this point. You replace the so the one you know what, there's a mistake in Plain Hunt as well. It should be place, cross, cross, place in Plain Hunt instead of cross, cross, cross there. Gosh, this slide is just a mess. So you've replaced place, cross, cross, place with place, cross, place, cross. So the next change will be generated with a cross, 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 cross. So it would be,
Okay.
yeah, if the Bob was called, then the next change would be 215346. If the single was called, the next change would be 315246 from the 6th
Okay.
form.
Yes.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for catching that mistake. James Burton says intrigues me, but kind of mind blown. That is the reaction I was going for. This stuff is, you look at this and you're going, what? It doesn't make any sense. I want to give you a taste of it, and what I hope you can see from it is, although it is complicated, it's not unsurmountably complicated. It's actually really interesting, and you can get your feet wet in it. The very first steps, plain hunt, is really quite simple. I could have you, if we're just the two of us and one other person, I could have you plain hunting on 2 handbells, keeping track of 2 bells in your hand in 30 minutes. It is not that difficult, and it just builds from there. Jenny asks, how would you define the Westminster chimes? 4 bell sequences with 4 different patterns and proper change ringing terms. You wouldn't. Westminster chimes are its own sort of clock chime kind of thing. It does not really have any, as far as I know, relationship to change ringing, or really defined that way. We do have some things. Tamara says Plano is easy to learn. It certainly is. And you are going to, if you'll volunteer at the end, you will be plain hunting. I'll have you do it on 1 bell. I guarantee you I can get you through a plain course of plain hunt with 1 bell in just a minute. All right, so that's the basic idea. Thank you so much, Catherine and Alan. Thank you both for volunteering to be my guinea pigs here. So if you want to learn to ring, change ringing, how would you do that? Or why would you do it? First of all, it is a social thing. All of my best friends are change ringers. Lots of interesting people should be the next word in the slide. It is an intellectual challenge, as you can see. It's if you like puzzles, if you like board games, you're a Sudoku person, you're a crossword person, the change ringing scratches a lot of those same itches. It's a wonderful low impact physical exercise, especially ringing tower bells. You have access to fun places and travel opportunities. My wife and I went on a honeymoon to England, and a ringer offered us to stay in her flat in London the whole time we were there for free. So I feel like you've got a bed to sleep in any town with a tower in the world, which is kind of neat. And just tons and tons of interesting people. You have new friends instantly wherever you go. And some of the towers are just really cool places. You get access to places that you don't normally get access to as a change ringer, and the tops of tall buildings and things. The sound is glorious. There's just nothing like being up there near the bells when they're pounding. You can feel it in your chest with some of the larger tenor bells. The history of it is really neat. Some people associate a spiritual aspect to it. Incidentally, although most of our towers are in churches, change ringers are not particularly religious. So some change ringers approach it as a service to their church. Some people approach it purely as an academic exercise, and those two groups of people get along remarkably well, and it's really neat. And one thing I love about it is I'm a busy guy. I've got a family. I have a full-time job, a very busy full-time job. Other musical ensembles, handbell choirs and things, you really have to commit to, but change ringing can be more casual. If you're not there every week, it's not a big deal. You can kind of come and go as your life enables you to do it. So anyway, I think it's the world's great hobby. I don't understand anyone who doesn't see the same thing that I see in it. And it's just a tremendously fun thing for me. So if you want to learn to ring, the first thing to do is see if there's a band in your area. So nagcr.org is the website of the North American Guild of Change Ringers. I think someone mentioned that Keith is from the UK. If there's anybody from the UK here or from another country, there are the change ringing group in the UK is the Central Council of Church Bell Ringers, and they can direct you to your local diocese organization. You probably know about the local towers in your area. If you're in other countries, Australia, New Zealand, they have a society similar. But if you're in North America, nagcr.org is the website that lists all of our local towers. If there is not a tower in your area, or if they don't ring handbells, or if they're not back from COVID yet, and you would like to learn to ring, if you'll give me a few months of maybe once a week-ish, I will teach you virtually. So if you can get 3 friends, so if you have 3 people, you can ring on 6 bells. And if you can get 3 people together that want to do this, I will commit to getting together with you once a week to learn to do it virtually online. If you make it those 3 months, I would even either fly to you or find another ringer close enough to drive to you to kind of get you over the hump to actually ringing on real bells as well, at least on handbells, and get you started in that way. And once you kind of put in that time, then the three of you can carry on ringing on your own. You'll know enough at that point that you can start to progress on your own. So anyone here, if you want to take me up on that, if there's not a local band for you, let me know and I'm happy to do it. If you want to learn more about, kind of the longer version of what I gave you with actually how to do it, this book is fantastic. It's fairly new. It's called Change Ringing on Handbells. It's available on Amazon. I'll post a link to it in the chat. Order that book and start reading it. It's got tons of great info on how to get started and learn more about it. All right, so we're going to do some questions now. Ran longer than I thought because of some questions, so sorry about that. If anybody needs to take off, that is perfectly okay. After questions, we're going to do the demo. So anyone who wants to participate, again, you need to register for an account at na.ringingroom.com. And once you've registered, you will need to go to that link. Oh, I just did that. No, I just did that as a direct message. That wasn't correct. There we go. I do not know if the demo is going to be part of the recording. Trust me, it's not going to be hard, and we're not trying to. Change ringing is often not even, especially online. There is a delay. As you probably know, you can't really ring in a handbell choir over Zoom unless it's kind of pre-recorded and you do some different stuff. But change ringing, we can. It's simple enough that the delay causes a problem, but it's not so bad that we can't have fun. So it isn't going to be perfect, and it doesn't need to be. So don't worry about how it's going to sound. It's just going to be a ton of fun for everyone. But go register for an account and then go to that website. It'll put you in the tower. You'll see yourself listed there on the left, and make sure you have headphones if you want to participate. If you just want to listen to the ringing in the demo, then all you need to do is go to that website. You don't have to register. Okay, and if you have any questions for me later, you can't find a local band or they don't respond to you, or you have some questions that you didn't ask here, my email address is there, my phone number is there. Feel free, I mean it, to email me or call me, and I will do my best to steer you in the right direction. All right, so before we go to the demo, what questions do people have? You can raise your hand. I'll leave the link up just for a bit. That's a great question. All right, so the link is there. I'm going to stop the share so you can actually see me. So the question from Wayne is, how do you stay hydrated when ringing for hours? You drink a lot beforehand, but not too much so you don't have to use the restroom while you're ringing. And then when you're done, you go to the water fountain or your nice large bottle and you drink like a camel who's been wandering the desert for several days. Interestingly enough, there have been people want to ring the longest peal. There have been peals as long as like 40,000 changes, takes 20 some hours, and those are with I have no interest in that. A quarter peal is a great length of ringing for me. 45 minutes is just about perfect. I have rung peals. I do ring them occasionally. I don't seek them out. That's a long time to do something for that long. A quarter peal is kind of like a 5K. A full peal is kind of like a marathon. It takes a lot of stamina, but people do it. You just get it done. What other questions do we have? Wayne, your question, the world record is 14 hours. How did they do that? I'm not sure. I think the world record is longer on handbells. I'd have to go look those up, but do you mean staying hydrated physically, or do you mean for more mechanically, like for the methods? Bathroom. Yeah. So some of them, it's a great question. Like the astronauts do, they might have a stadium buddy or something. Or often, as anyone who's worked outside knows, if you're sweating a lot, you don't necessarily need to do that. There are examples I've heard tell of back when ringing was more of solely a gentleman's pursuit of buckets, and very careful manipulation of aim while ringing. But I've never seen or heard of that in modern times.
I have a question.
Shoot.
When I was in high school, I rang at church and we used 8 bells. We did an octave. We did a change ring that involved passing it off to your neighbor or switching yours.
Yep.
But none of us can remember the pattern.
So it was plain hunt is probably what you were doing. And it was that simple, you swap bells, you swap your 2 bells first. And then if you are on the end, then if you're at the first place or last place, then your right hand, if you're in first place, or your left hand, if you're in last place, stays in that hand. And then everyone swaps bells with their neighbor. And then you swap your 2 and then swap bells with your neighbor. Swap your 2 and swap bells with your neighbor. And that will generate plain hunt. You're simulating that cross, 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 cross versus place, cross, 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 place mechanism.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, certainly. Any other questions? None. Going once, going twice. Okay, let